The Wanted Man, read by Helen Porter and written by Helen Porter. Chapter 1. Get rid of Ridam. Jack awoke suddenly as his phone began to buzz and ring loudly from his bedside table. He opened his eyes blearily, glancing at the alarm clock. He cursed. He'd only been in bed for an hour, and he had really needed his sleep. He sat up slowly, shivering as his top half came into contact with the cold air outside of the duvet cover. He glanced at his phone. He was startled to find it wasn't that phone that was ringing. Quickly, he looked at his second phone's caller display. He picked the call up immediately, assuming the worst. "Jack, no time for pleasantries. You need to get out of there, now. No time to explain. Get out! Get out! They're coming for you. I'll contact later with more info." The caller immediately put the phone down. This spurred Jack into action. Frantically, he put his clothes on, ignoring the cold, grabbed his mobile and the bag from under the bed, took his keys and ran for the back door. Slowing up, he peered around the blinds next to the back door, his eagle eyes searching for any sign of an intruder. He unlocked the back door quietly and cracked the door open slightly, waiting for any sign that there was someone watching him. As he opened the door, he could hear the faint sound of sirens. This spurred him on. He brought his gun out from the bag and held it by his body, ready for anything. He slipped out of the back door, his back to the house, and crept round to the side, his eyes searching for movement. He carried on towards the car, but moved instead to the shed, quickly opened it, and uncovered his motorbike. With no less speed, he started it up, and was off in a second. As he was leaving the property, he could hear the sirens getting louder, so quickly changing direction, he drove off into the night. He drove out of town, as he knew that he had to get away, as far away as possible from his house. He drove for as long as possible, stopping only when he started getting to the middle of London. He knew hiding in London was risky, what with the amount of cops in the place, but it was also an easy place to get lost in a crowd. He parked his motorbike up, paid the parking fees, then walking round the corner he donned a baseball cap and checked his weapon was completely concealed. He walked to the nearest cafe and after ordering a coffee, sat down and started to think and to wait for the phone call he knew was coming. It was quite early in the morning, but there were a fair few customers in the cafe. He watched them distractedly as he thought about his predicament. Only one person knew his telephone number, his police boss, Sam Dane, who was one of his closest friends and colleagues. He hated leaving, but he knew that if Sam was worried, then he had to get out, and he had been right. Those coppers had definitely been after him. He had had to run from people before, but never from his own side. He watched as a young mother and daughter came into the cafe, the daughter demanding a cookie while the mother was downcast that she could not provide for the young girl. He walked over to them and silently handed the mother a pound, the cost of the overpriced cookie. She said thanks. He nodded and went back to his coffee. This turned his mind to Lara and Liam. That was by far the worst thing about this whole situation, that he had to leave them behind. Liam was only 10 months old, and although he had split with Lara, they had been on amicable terms. Because of his job, she had got custody, but he still got to see him every weekend he could. He knew he couldn't even try and contact them, because if he did, then he'd be traced immediately, and if it was a good side after him, then he wouldn't get very far before getting caught. He hoped valiantly nothing had happened to them, and started to wonder exactly why he was getting chased. He had not annoyed anyone recently, that he could remember. In fact, he had been behaving better than usual, mostly because nothing had been going wrong. He and his partner Dave had helped shut many easy cases, and it had been going well, nothing out of the ordinary. Lara hadn't given him any problems, he hadn't given Lara any problems, and Liam was developing wonderfully. Suddenly his phone started vibrating in his pocket. Sighing heavily, he picked it up, looking around himself. "Hello," he answered, knowing exactly who it would be on the other end of the phone anyway. "James, how are you?" replied Sam, using one of Jack's less used aliases instead of his usual name. They would still be careful, even though the phone should be secure. "Well, I'm sitting in a nice cafe drinking some good strong coffee, so not too bad, I'd say. How are you doing?" Jack asked, carrying on the charade. "To be honest with you, James, I've been better. I wanted to let you know that the whole mess I was complaining about before to you is still happening. It is still annoying the hell out of me. I don't know when it's going to be sorted either," said Sam. Jack took this information in. Sam meant that they were still looking for him, and didn't have a clue when they would give up, if ever. "Did you ever find out the source of the mess?" Jack asked, trying to get some more information, wondering whether he could find out, while he was on the run, more information to help his case. "Well, see, the problem all centres around a mother and baby found the other day, and so the problem has been expanding ever since. The mother and baby are related to Julian, and that's where it all stems from," replied Sam. Jack put his head in his hands. That meant that something had happened to Lara and Liam, as Julian was another of his aliases. "Are the mother and baby in hospital?" Jack asked, fearing the answer. "The baby is. The mother isn't," Sam said, flinching as he heard a slight sob from the other end of the phone call. He hadn't wanted to tell Jack what had happened to Lara, but he had known that he would have to. Jack was quietly sobbing. He was glad Liam was okay, but Lara dead? Impossible. So, for some reason, they're blaming the whole problem on Julian, without even investigating what really happened. I'm trying my best, but the government are really trying to push everything under the carpet, and find Julian with the aid of as many police stations as possible. I don't know why the government are pushing so hard on this one, James, said Sam apologetically. I don't know why either. That was Jack's way of telling Sam he had no idea what was going on, any more than Sam did. Look, James, I gotta go. I'll ring again soon. Hopefully when this is all blown over. Look after yourself, you hear me? Sam said. Bye, said Jack, just hanging up. He couldn't talk any more. He needed to get out of there and find a place to stay, and a way of disguising himself that was more complicated than a baseball cap. He got up quickly, walked out of the coffee shop, went to where he parked his motorbike. Quickly hopping on, he sped off once more. Sitting in his office in the small police station in Basingstoke, Sam sighed heavily as he looked over the case notes, flicking through the pages again and again and again, trying to find if he had missed something, anything that could help. He had been one of the people to process the scene, and had seen the government officials come and take over the crime scene. He hated seeing Lara in such a state, and poor baby Liam without a mother. He would do all he could to make sure the custody arrangements for Liam were maintained, as Jack had been very specific who would take care of Liam, if he or Lara couldn't be there. He would not let the baby get caught up in the politics of the case. They had only had half an hour, at most, at the crime scene before the government officials had appeared, which hadn't been very much time to process anything, seeing as though most of the police officials had known Lara and had been in shock at being called out to that particular house. They did have some evidence, though, or at least photographic evidence. They had not gained any of the DNA evidence or objects found at the crime scene, or even Lara's body for autopsy. They had been told that they would be given these parts of evidence only when the government had finished with it. He doubted the officials even realised that his men already had taken photographs. He flicked back to the pictures of the scene. Lara was lying in a small pool of blood, with defensive wounds and a shot to the chest. Her mobile phone was lying to the right of her, as if she had dropped it when she fell to the floor. The whole apartment had been torn up, as if there had been a row between her and someone else. Baby Liam had been found in his cot upstairs, ignored, but screaming his lungs out in terror. The TV had been left on, with the remote lying on the floor discarded. There had been evidence of people drinking beer, with empty beer bottles left all over the coffee table and spilling onto the floor. One bottle had been smashed, and there had been definite signs of blood on it, and with the scratches on Lara, he was sure whose blood it had been. The easiest thing to think was that it had been Jack who had been there and had an argument with her, but he knew, and his men knew, that Jack would never have had an argument so large that it had ripped up the apartment, and he also knew that Jack would never harm a woman like this, especially not the mother of his only child. The government was simply trying very hard to pin the blame on the easiest candidate, and to cover something up that they did not want anyone else knowing or seeing. He would not rest until he had found out what had happened. He owed that much to Jack, Lara, and Liam. Slamming the case notes down, he got up and stalked out of into the squad room, his colleagues looking up at the noise. Immediately, Dave, Jack's partner, came forward with a piece of paper in his hands. He handed it silently to Sam, and then went back and sat down at his desk to start typing madly again on his keyboard. Sam looked down at the piece of paper that had been handed to him. His stomach dropped immediately. It was a wanted poster for Jack, with a very good picture of him and a £10,000 reward. He resolutely screwed it up and went over to where his more technologically minded colleague sat. He sat down next to him. Now, here's what we need to do. Director Vine sat in his rather more spacious office, contemplating the events of the day. They had to capture Jack Ridam, and they had to catch him quickly. They knew that pinning what had happened to Lara Ridam on Jack was a risky business because he was a cop, but it was the easiest idea at the time. He hadn't realised that Jack would be able to run as quickly as he had. Fine had thought he would have at least gone to the crime scene to see what had happened. Fine shook his head. It didn't matter. They would catch up to Jack soon. He had all the best people working on finding him, and he wouldn't be able to hide for long. Fine got up from his chair and moved to the observation window that showed all the security screens that were in the building. Ignoring all the other enticing video feeds, he enlarged one particular screen. Staring at the image, he whispered, Now we hold the key to everything."